Hey, everybody. Welcome to episode 27 of Are We There Yet? Centerfold. I'm your host, Susan Ruth.
And I'm your host, Mara Adelman. And we are two humans who are going to have the real conversation and raise all those questions we have about where it's there when it comes to dating, relationships, and sex. And today we're going to be talking about pornography. What? So where has your there been lately, darling?
I'm going to plug something that doesn't pay us to say so, but I just discovered these bar of soaps that are shampoo and conditioner, and they are great and they smell really good and they work really well. And I'm pretty stoked about it. We'll see how a week's worth of usage. It's called Good Company, the shampoo and conditioner place. Anyway, it gets rid of all those pesky plastic bottles that fill up landfills. So I'm pretty excited about it.
To save the oceans one step, and your hair looks really shiny and glossy. So
it's like shiny and puffy, and yeah, it's good. We'll see what happens. So.
I will try it too and report back because I did that with laundry soap, and I'm trying to get rid of the bottles.
Yeah, get rid of the bottles. So I was skeptical, but I'm excited. So yay!
It is exciting.
What about you? What's your there?
Well, it's hilarious because we just did our last episode on 26 on the dating apps, and I was all poop. I mean, I still feel poopy about it all, but I actually had a video date for the first time where I was like, oh, I'd want to go out with this person in person. That's fun.
Oh my.
And then I didn't hear from him, but I was brave, and I was like, he had talked about it. There's a casino 14 minutes from my house, which I've never checked out. Music, and he saw like MC Hammer's there. I don't know, fun music things. So he had mentioned that while we were talking, and I was like, hey, Sunday afternoon, you should help me burst my casino cherry. And he was like, that sounds great. So usually I would wait for the guy to make a move, but I want to go to the casino, and it's fun to go with a cute boy to the casino.
Okay. Can't wait to see how that turns out.
I'll report back. Half the time, no offense, half the time it's words and then they get flake or, but that's okay. Because that song, I Can Buy Myself Flowers, Miss
I do.
I love that song.
It never leaves my brain it's the best earwig. I think it and Toxic are two of the most earwiggy songs that get stuck in your head.
Yes.
Miley Cyrus and Britney Spears.
Yeah. But also, I'm going to take myself to dinner and dancing tomorrow night. I'm like, who needs a guy for this?
Well, I mean, it's my motto. That whole thing is definitely, starts with us.
Starts with us, and then we can move into the pornography piece. How old were you when you saw your first porn?
Well, unfortunately, I have sort of a dark story about that. When I was quite young, my mother brought me on a trip to San Francisco, or Northern California, San Rafael-ish area, to visit with her best friend's family. And I was probably, somewhere 7, 8, 9, somewhere in there. It's sort of a blur of my actual age. I know I was precocious because that was the year that my mother told me that I couldn't have bangs. So I ran and grabbed scissors, pulled all my hair forward and cut them. And then just basically had to have a bowl cut all summer because it was atrocious. But anyway, so I think I was probably like 7 or 8. So they have a couple sons and who were about 20 and 23 at the time. And one of the sons, I was walking outside on their property and came up around the hill, and he was in a hammock, and he's like, oh, come sit in the hammock. You're a little kid. This is your mom's best friend's kid. You don't think anything of it. You're like, oh, okay. This is an adult though, right? Sit in the hammock, and he's like cuddling me on the hammock, and he's like, do you want to see some cool pictures? Oh. And I said, sure. And he took me, so his room was not part of the main house. It was like a converted garage. It took me in there, and like everywhere. It was Cherry and Penthouse and Play, and the really intense porn magazines, like intense. And he's like, do you want to look at these? And you're 7 or whatever. You're like, yeah, sure. And so I started looking at them all. And then I don't really remember. So I don't know if anything happened or whatever. It's just all kind of blurry. But I do remember when I left his room, he gave me a couple of sort of small porn magazines. and said, don't tell anybody, these are for you. And I remember like just like sort of sneaking them out and then looking at them and then getting, hypersexualized by it,
Yeah.
to be honest. And so that was interesting. And it didn't develop into a porn issue for me or anything, but it is, in retrospect, it's pretty creepy.
I'm pretty sure he had a porn problem. Yes.
For sure he did. And he might also have been a pedophile. And then years later, I was having an art show and his parents had long died. And my mother didn't know this story, obviously. And she had him, I was home visiting and she had invited him to this art show. I didn't know that. And it was the weirdest thing, Mara, as I was walking over, I saw my mom talking to somebody. And as I walked closer and he turned, my body had like this intense visceral reaction. I was like, and I was just like, ew, it was just the creepiest thing. And that's when I started piecing together. I'm like, oh, maybe there's something in there that I just don't remember, but my body was like, get away from this person. And the craziest thing, now, my mother is very vocal about the fact that she was molested as a kid. The craziest thing is I said to my mom later that afternoon, I think that he might have molested me, or he certainly was way inappropriate. And she's like, oh no, she just blew it off. She's like, no, you probably just misunderstood it all. I'm like, what? So that's my experience. And the other experiences were we lived across the street from woods. And of course, when you're a teenager, like junior high, roaming through the woods with your friends, and you always find the porn stash in some weird bush. That was the other. Yeah. So one dark story, one funny story.
Well, but that's super dark. It worries me that maybe he was, the fact that you had that body reaction says
I know
something happened, or even just the fact that you felt uncomfortable because here he is like trying to hug you and stuff while you're looking at this pornographic material. Super inappropriate.
Mm-hmm. I think because I don't remember. And I have a couple theories on that, and again, we're getting into stuff that is probably a little personal and strange, but the thing of the matter is I had a therapist once who she was like, okay, I was doing this work and I couldn't get past this one. There was like this giant wall. It was all slimy and gross and blecky. And I was like, I'm trying to get behind the wall. She goes, don't go behind the wall. She's like, there's a reason your brain put that wall there. Don't go behind it. Yeah. So if something did happen to me and I just don't remember and my body remember, whatever, but I don't think it's caused an issue for me. I don't think in my life now, but certainly my body is like, that is not a good person. Stay away from that person.
It'll be interesting. In a little bit, we'll talk about like the problem with kids and stuff, viewing this stuff. But I wonder down the road if this is going to have an impact on people. The fact that the stuff is so accessible. In my case, like mine feels a little more like how it's kind of supposed to me. Who knows? I would probably around 8, I think I was pretty sexualized. Like I remember the song that Centerfold, like I remember hearing that and being like, woo, like just loving it. And then by like 11ish, I think it was me and my sister was always there, my twin sister, and like, maybe 6 friends, like half girls and half guys at some kid's house. And he was like, you guys want to see a video? So we're all sitting around watching porn together. Boys kind of instigated that. But I don't remember, I remember feeling a little shy, like maybe we shouldn't all do this together. But I don't remember feeling there was no predatoriness to it.
Sure.
But it does still feel like that feels a little more natural, maybe. And then I remembered a little bit later in life, I bought my first Hustler, like in my early 20s, and read the stories. I was like, woo! And then it turned into like the videotape era, the VHS era, for all you youngins out there. We used to watch things on video cassettes, and you'd have to go to either the back of the rental place or there was one in Napa Pleasures where you'd go to the back room and get stuff. And then it was DVDs. And now I don't watch a lot of porn, but when I do, it's
on your phone
right there. I can find a million things, which is fine because I'm an adult who doesn't have a porn problem. And I'm not a child.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, I think we talked about this on a past one. I thought the number was 8 years old that kids are finding porn on phones, but I think I heard something as young as 5. That's so
it's
5.
Yeah, it's 5.
I've personally heard about it, and then I guess 5-year-olds are even finding it. So anybody who's watching, put parental controls on your phone. Like, don't give your kid the phone. Kids are curious, especially at 5. Kids know how to Google. Like, And at 5 is when they start playing doctor and start thinking about their body parts. And so but it's also not appropriate for them to pull up like high, I don't know, like what's the word I'm looking for? Super kinky, a little bit.
Yeah, it's stuff for adults.
It's for adults, bottom line. So I'm going to read this. So I kind of miss the 2 Playboys under the mattress days, or finding a stash in the woods.
I stole my mother from my brother's, I want to say it was his 16th birthday. My mother has, her own issues, but bought my brother a subscription to Playboy. And so I stole one of those and I hid it under my bed. And I used to look at that pretty regularly, I think. And I think somebody found it, somebody in the family found it. And so, yeah, I don't know. It's interesting. And then, of course, the college, when you go in and someone's playing just the craziest porn on the TV and you're like, what is happening right there? Yeah.
It's interesting, and again, so we have a quiz that's linked down below that says, are you addicted to porn? I'm definitely not. But I realized something the other day. You got me that fabulous book, Little Birds, which after we had our erotic one for my birthday, thank you, and a couple others. And I read a couple chapters of the book, and erotica definitely is a turn on. The problem is porn is fast. It takes your brain from reality and adulting and stress, which we'll talk about when it comes to the addiction piece of it, quickly into shutting down and only thinking about sex. And so, because I'm always in such a busy person, I'm going to try to read more erotica, but porn works quickly. And that's part of the draw.
You have to remember, however, that the brain is quite easily trained. Yes. And so if you train your brain that this thing you're taking in is the thing that gets you turned on and excited and lead to potential orgasm, your brain will start to go, oh, that's the only thing that works for me. So like anything, moderation is key. If you eat 3 Big Macs a day for 20 years or whatever, I don't think that's super healthy. It's like everything in moderation. And also you understand when you're taking in these images that they are a fantasy, that real people don't A, look like that, B, behave like that, C, have body response like that. It's just, there's a danger when you're not able to take yourself out of the fantasy and back into reality.
And we'll get into, so that's on the con list for sure, because people get more and more into it. I figure my 10 minutes a week aren't going to be a problem, but
this is why I will forever say that anime hentai porn is my favorite, because I don't feel bad for anyone.
Yes.
And I don't think any human being is going to suddenly turn into an octopus or a bondage fairy. It's just not
right. I do feel slightly bad, but we'll get into that. I always love to start with the history. So who knew? In 1908 was the first pornographic film, La Bonne Auberge. And it was even made before the first Western feature film, which is fascinating. I have never heard of it or watched it, but young people can't even imagine a time when like porn was only in the theaters, but hidden behind things, underground theaters. And now it's again widely accessible. But I remember watching Deep Throat, which was one of the very first ones that came out. And if I remember correctly, wasn't the premise that she would give a blowjob and have an orgasm?
Yes, her erogenous zone was in the back of her throat.
It'll play nicely into some of the other problems with porn, because not true. But the Kinsey Institute, which I love, is actually, they hold a lot of the existing copies of all of the earliest pornographic films. That's cool.
That is cool. And there's a Kinsey Library in Bloomington, Indiana. If you're ever in Bloomington, I very highly recommend going to check it out. Not library, museum.
Yeah. I would love to go to the Kinsey Museum. Me and you should meet there and go check out the museum.
I actually have images hanging on the walls there.
You told me that.
Yeah.
Can we go someday? I would love to meet you there. That would be fun.
For the people watching, I have posed for fine art photography with a very famous photographer, Dr. David Teplica. And so some of the images that he has taken of me hang in that museum, which is pretty cool. That and also Chicago. It's a whole other thing. But
are they erotic? Are they nudes?
They are definitely nudes, but his work is recontextualizing body parts. So either super close up, so you're not even sure what you're looking at, or mashing together of a bunch of bodies. It's really beautiful work. You can Google him, David Teplica.
So fun.
Yeah.
If we're
Yeah.
gonna do that one day. So these stats are interesting. Porn industry, $1 billion a year. Last year, Pornhub averaged more than 1 million visits per day. That's crazy talk.
That's a lot of dirty socks.
A lot of dirty socks. If you hear anything, my cat just got excited. Oh my God, he's hunting for his toy. Can you hear him?
There's a lot of metaphor in that.
I apologize for that. Then, interestingly enough, I would think that the numbers were a bit different, but it's 71% of men and 38% of women use porn. And a lot of people use it as an escape from reality because, like all things that feel good, it increases dopamine, especially if you end up having an orgasm from it. And so 10% of adults admit to having an addiction to internet porn. 17% of those are women. 20% of men and 13% of women admit to accessing porn while at work. So there's a lot of people who are doing it who aren't admitting to it.
Wow.
And so that plays into the dopamine thing. You're having, so it says on here, like if you're having, it's like an escape from reality, right? That's why I do it for 10 minutes. So these people are at work and they're having a bad day and they're like, close the blinds and pull out the porn.
Jacob's bring in the Phillips file, and Phillips file is just sticky.
So gross. I can't even imagine doing that.
Never again at work will you shake anyone's hand.
No, totally grossed out by that. No, thank you. What's interesting is, of course, it's more of a stigma for women. Like even admitting that I watch 10 minutes a week makes 70% of women admit to keeping their cyber activities totally secret. But 1 out of every 3 visitors of adult websites are women.
Yeah, I mean, the nice thing about Pornhub is you can just type in lesbian porn or clit or, whatever it is and have it be
what you're looking for.
It
is kind of nice that way.
I would say I much prefer lesbian porn to straight porn.
Oh, I hear that because it's we'll get into that in a minute because it's not that typical blowjob, penis, rabbit, come scenario, right?
Sure.
But because you and I had talked about this before, I've been trying to find more things that are more female centric, and I'll give us there's some cool stuff happening in that department. The other interesting thing is women favor chat rooms twice as much as men. And I guess that makes sense because men are more visual and women want that emotional thing, which while you're chatting with somebody fills that emotional void a little bit, if we're generalizing.
Okay.
Yeah, right. So yes. Sorry, what was your last comment? I was hearing you.
I think I just said something about the search function on Pornhub, which, I go to Pornhub probably once. I mean, I'm not that into it, just isn't. I have a very active imagination. I should say that. So anything that a porn could show me, I have already 1,000 times over topped in my imagination. And in my imagination, it's very vivid. So it is just like watching a thing,
I'm pretty envious of that because then I don't have to hold like I would prefer not. There are parts of me that feel like it's female objectification, and some of these women are doing it because they like it. Some of these women maybe not so much. And so let me start with the pros, but when we go into the cons, there's people trying to correct that, which is fabulous.
And you do not have to bleach your buttholes, ladies.
No, or cut off your labia and have surgery or shave everything. This is not the world that you have to live in if you don't want to live in it. Here's a list of pros. There are some pros to porn. So if you're in a couple, it can foster a stronger bond if you're both consenting and you're watching it. It can strengthen your relationship because you're talking about your fantasies and what you like and what you don't like. And it can prove to be a good move for both of you if you're in kind of a sex rut. It'll spark things up.
And we've talked in the past, don't mean to interrupt, but we talked in the past about how women and men, if it's a heteronormative couple, that they achieve their climax in it takes a while for one versus the other. So you can start your engines if you're in a relationship where one person maybe is a little quicker to the draw than you are. This doesn't have to be heteronormative, it could be anybody, but just using that as an example.
That is a great example. And yes, I have friends of mine where he'll say, honey, go get warmed up. And she'll go turn on some porn and try to get warmed up because it does take our brains sometimes as females, not always, just shut down. And then the orgasm gap is huge. Like, men take about 7 minutes and women take 20. Part of that, these are the higher numbers. That's because our brains are still on and we need to shut them down. And so porn can help with that. Yeah.
I just had a great merch idea.
What was it? You know,
Have
I
you
like
ever been
to-
have you ever been to England? You know, when you ride the trains, it's mind the gap. You could do a t-shirt with that logo and have it say mind the orgasm gap. I think that would be a good seller.
That is such a good seller. And everybody then would ask, what is the orgasm gap? And then the people would get a little card that explains they need to slow down and the women.
Let me show you.
Let me show you. And using pornography in that way is a pro, as well as the fact that in a lot of couples, there's a libido gap. And so if a female's not feeling like it, sometimes incorporating pornography, whether it's magazines or visual, can increase their libido so that there's less of that libido gap going on in the couple.
Not just women, men too.
I know, yeah, but yes, that is true. But if you look at the numbers, unfortunately for women, it's harder to have your libido stay strong in a long-term
But
relationship.
the older men get, the less their libido is kicking in, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, there's the cruelty to having raging hormones before you're 25, and that you don't have the brain to really handle all that.
It's freaking cruel. I totally agree. I want my hormones back, but it's kind of nice that they've slowed down. I have to say, it's good. It's also, so the other pros, it's a huge stress buster. Of course, we've talked about that because it gives you dopamine and lowers your cortisol levels. People can learn about their fantasies and desires. We talked about that. So the cool part about the pro part is more and more people are doing it better. And so there's a company called Make Love Not Porn. Cindy Gallup is the owner of that. And it's subscription based, so you have to pay for it. But I did it for a little bit to watch, and I enjoyed it. It is more full spectrum human sexuality. It has real couples doing real things, all the awkward moments and the laughing and the queefing and all the stuff that is very rarely shown on porn is shown. And so that's kind of great.
And
Also,
we could link to that, except for YouTube would get mad at us. So you'll have to find that with the old Google machines.
that is true, because YouTube likes to get mad at us when we put things that are pornographic on there. The other cool thing I was watching, there's a Hulu series called Planet Sex, and one of them was called Pornocopia. And essentially there's a director called Erica Lust who is making female-driven, female pornography. And I think there's going to be more of an uptick of that. So maybe it'll all balance out. That's kind of fun, because the idea of like the male-driven pieces, again, like that, so much of it is young female, older man, blowjob, throw the girl down, jackrabbit her, she fakes an orgasm. And this is how young people are learning how to have sex. I actually have a client right now who's in his 20s, who's a virgin and wants to change that. And unfortunately, a lot of the misconceptions, body image, how long your erection's supposed to last, how big it's supposed to be, these things really can affect male-bodied people. And so, and for women, it's more the cut your labia off, shave your wax, don't have any cellulite. And this is what children are learning. And so that it breaks my heart a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah. Bring back real bodies.
So again, if you go to Make Love Not Porn, there's tons of real bodied people. And that is what real sex looks like, not the other.
So you're saying I'm not going to have sex with an octopus with 8 penises.
You know what? Because of you, what's it called? Hentai porn?
Yeah, it's hentai.
I'm going to have to try it just to try it now, because I am curious.
There's a lot of this, but
I don't know if it's going to do
look, like anything else, any story can be driven in any sort of way. So really, like anything, make your consumption that which is with intellect and with choice, and not just willy-nilly. I think that as long as we are being, what's the word, present in our choices, conscious of our choices, we make better choices.
Yeah. And so the other cool thing that's happening, you might have heard of this because you're in the film industry and your movie's going to come out eventually soon. So there's a whole rise of intimacy coordinators. So essentially, there's so much sex scenes on TV and in movies, and now they have these intimacy coordinators. You might know more about this than I do. And they essentially make sure that the actors aren't put in vulnerable positions, that everything's been agreed to. And so that makes me feel better, because I would imagine that it's very vulnerable to be acting out a sex scene without having somebody there to make sure that it's done well for the, and again, generalizing, but more for the female bodied people, right? Like you want to feel safe in those
For
environments.
anyone. I mean, there are stories rife in Hollywood of males being having people aggress against males as much as,
Really?
oh yeah, sure. It's a, I think when it comes to predatory behavior, it's just a predator is going to be a predator.
Predator's going to be a predator. I agree.
Yeah.
And again, I guess it's just, it's my my goggles, right? My goggles are women are the weaker species. Women are the ones that are degraded against. Porn increases aggression sometimes. There's those ones where like people are getting the spitting in the mouth. I mean, just
I don't think women are the weaker species. I think they're the stronger for all that they endure. But I get what you're saying. Yeah.
physically, we are a little more likely to be victimized, unfortunately.
Smaller and yeah, sure.
Smaller, but that's okay. So the cons of porn, again, less imagination, because we're doing the whole, like, not reading the erotic books anymore. Everybody's just got their faces shoved in there. It can reinforce all the bad body images like we talked about. It leads to people developing serious unrealistic expectations about what sex really looks like. Most men cannot go 40 minutes. And in fact, if you're going 40 minutes, it's often called delayed ejaculation. And
also, that sounds like too much.
Yeah. And so,
I'm like, you're fine. If it's 5, 6, 7, 10 minutes, then if it's good, great,
Right. And so
we're not trying to write War and Peace
over
here.
It can be however, I guess my motto is it can be however it is. We can't put so many expectations on people's bodies. Talking to that young client of mine, I'm just like, this is all unrealistic. Most penises are not this big. Most penises are this big. And so again, the cons of porn, especially for young people watching it, is they think that that's realistic, and it's not realistic. And then of course, unfortunately, there are a lot of people who have addiction to porn. What were the numbers again? It was a lot. It's a lot. People get addicted to porn just like they get addicted to any other substance. They did a study out of research out of the University of San Diego with people who admitted to having porn addiction, and they put them in the MRI scan. And the gray matter in the frontal lobe, which is always decreased in people with any kind of addiction, is greatly decreased also in people who have an admitted porn addiction problem. And so, you have a problem if you can't control how long, how much, where you're doing it. If you have no control about whether you shut down early for lunch and do that at your office desk, even though you could get caught and fired, that might be pushing into the addiction area. And so we link down below to Porn Addicts Anonymous, just like Alcohol Anonymous, just like anything else. It can also lead, unfortunately, to anxiety, mood disorders, sex addiction, substance use disorders. Those things often go together with a porn addiction.
Also, escalation is a big thing.
Yes. And which way?
Escalation in that if something titillates you and then that's not enough and you have to keep ramping up and eventually, you are watching quite hardcore stuff and no bueno there,
And unfortunately for those people, oftentimes that can now lead to erectile dysfunction, because in the real world, you go to have sex with somebody and you don't have all of those sexual cues like you talked about. What did you call it when you said, your brain gets used to it. And so now you don't have those sexual cues and now you can't get an erection. I actually knew a young person like that. And I was like, you need to stop the porn. And so treatment for that is like everything else. You need to go cold turkey. You need to go get treatment, whether that's talk therapy. Millions of different forms of therapy can help with that. They did some early research that naltrexone, which is the same drug they're using, it's called medical assisted therapy. They're using naltrexone for a lot of different addictions, alcohol, drug addictions, and it blocks some of those receptors. And they're thinking that it could also probably help with porn addiction, which is great. But the main thing is if you feel like you have an addiction, go get some help, because just like any other addiction, it's going to mess up your life.
Yeah.
You're going to get fired. You're going to have problems in your relationships. And so again, can't control how much, how long, or where you're doing it. It might be a problem.
And no, if you do have a problem, you're not alone. There are lots and lots of people with the same issue, and there is help There is help. So don't feel like there's not, or that it's an insurmountable issue. Just admitting is the first step, like with any kind of addiction.
Yes.
And we'll provide some resource for you to seek help and, get better, get yourself back on track.
Yeah. And then we also, yes, everything you said is correct on that. And I feel like we did link to some stuff like pros and cons of porn, everything you need to know about porn addiction, things you can watch, your brain and porn, a bunch of stuff down below. And then we took a quiz, and luckily, just like I thought, it pretty much told me I have little or no indication of porn addiction. Thank God. I was like, if 10 minutes a week is a porn addiction, we've got problems.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, for a lot of people, that might come up as a yes. I wanted to read this really quick because it kept a couple quotes that I heard. It is the opposite of what porn is. Real life sex is not what porn shows. And so there was this little poem about slow sex. And this is what sex should be more like than what is portrayed a lot of times. Forget about time, forget about performance, forget about the pressure to orgasm. Take your time, enjoy the touch, the smell, the sounds, do it for the pleasure. And so again, most of the porn you watch is not bad. It's not connected sex. It feels very disconnected. And so again,
it sounds like a cotton commercial.
That's cute. Yeah. I just hope that people find a way to have more connected real sex.
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with you if you like porn. They're
No.
totally healthy and fine. If you are a consenting adult, understand like anything else, I think understand what the porn industry represents, who participates in it. There are some really great standardized practices now in the porn industry. We're actually going to have a porn star on the show in 2 weeks, so definitely tune into that. And just like anything, be aware of how you move in the world and what your choices are. And if you feel like or somebody perhaps is struggling with porn addiction, seek help. One day at a time.
It's also okay to have porn like sex. That's also fun sometimes, but it shouldn't be the only thing in the repertoire. And on that note, I just go back to it breaks my heart. As a medical provider and a sexologist who sees kids as a medical provider and adults as a sexologist, I find that it breaks my heart that the only real sex education for our children nowadays is either abstinence or porn. And there is nothing in the middle. Like, I'll cry, like I get all goosebumpy and cryy about it. And so on that note, there's people like me. My youngest client has been 20, but I would be very happy if any parents out there are like, I don't know what to do with my teen. They won't listen to me. I want them to talk to somebody, because unfortunately the average age to start getting addicted to porn is like 15 to 17. And so if you're noting that your child seems to be over enthralled with these things, or you're finding that they need help now to understand what the real world sex should be like.
Or just to have somebody to talk to if you're awkward about talking to your kids about sex.
Oh, yeah.
Don't want it to happen. And
it's horrible, but it's one of my favorite things. Like, it's not horrible, but like, because it's like, talking to teenagers about sex. But if it was up to me, you and I would be going around plenty of talks at schools. But I don't want to deal with the irate parents around that.
No, of course. Yeah, of course. Yeah. Well, I mean, look, it's, again, I say it all the time. It's a tough planet. We're trying to deal with hormones and each other. And there's a lot of places and people who want to regulate how we think and feel about our own bodies, about other people's bodies. So we have to stick up for each other and be support system. And you are loved. There's nothing wrong with you. If there's something like, if you feel like something is taking over your life, that's a whole other issue. But be safe, be smart, be aware, be in your body if you can. And it's tricky. We're talking to a wide breadth of people, and we don't know from where they come from when they take in our show. So if they're people of, survivors of abuse, there are people that may have decided they'll never have sex, and that's okay too. And maybe they do porn and they're going to just be in their own little world, and that's okay too. I mean, there's just like, there's so many, it's hard in a show like this because we are sort of doing sweeping generalizations as best we can to cover a humongous topic in a very short amount of time. So bear with us.
Yes.
We'll do the best we can.
Yeah, but I think we brought up some good key points today, and I'm super excited to meet our guest in 2 weeks.
Griffin Burrows.
Give us the name again?
Griffin Burrows.
Griffin Burrows, because I'm fascinated with the process, and hopefully he'll be able to tell us how things are moving in the right direction for the porn industry.
Yes. Mara, thank you for this show.
Thank you. And
Love
don't forget,
you.
I love you, girl. I love you, man.
Don't forget to subscribe. Check out the links, Google things so that YouTube doesn't get mad at us. And
oh, and don't forget to subscribe because we still have a bunch of toys from Vibratex to give away.
yes,
So if you subscribe or follow us on Instagram, we have toys and we will mail them discreetly to your house.
one a month until we run out. Yay! Yay!
All right, everybody, stay connected and well. And I love you, Miss Susan. You have a good day.
Bye. Bye, everybody.